The morning sunlight filtered weakly through the dusty blinds of Maple and Steam Diner, painting long amber streaks across the counter where Nora Carter stood, wiping down the same spot for the third time. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was miles away, on the stack of unpaid bills folded neatly in her apron pocket. Outside, snowmelt dripped from the edges of the diner's old roof, and the world moved slowly, almost too quietly, except for the faint hum of a distant highway. It was the kind of morning that felt empty, until the door creaked open, and a frail, shivering old man stepped inside, his clothes soaked through, shoes barely holding together. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of a simple act of compassion to change a life forever, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest gestures can ripple into miracles. The man's name was Harold Quinn. Nora didn't know that yet. She only saw a hungry stranger who looked like he hadn't had a warm meal in days. His fingers trembled as he clutched an old hat in his hands, and his eyes darted nervously between the booths, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to sit down. The diner was nearly empty that morning. Nora walked over and asked softly if he wanted coffee. He nodded hesitantly, his voice barely a whisper when he said, "I don't have any money, miss. Just looking to warm up for a minute." Nora smiled, an exhausted, genuine kind of smile. "Coffee's on me," she said, and poured him a steaming cup before he could refuse. That morning, as the snow kept falling, she quietly slipped him a plate of scrambled eggs and toast too. She told her manager she had accidentally made an extra order, and no one questioned it. That became their unspoken routine. Every morning, Harold would appear right after sunrise, his face weathered, his gray beard slightly unkempt but his eyes kind. Nora would greet him with a smile, pour his coffee just the way he liked it, 2 sugars, no cream, and bring him whatever the kitchen could spare. Sometimes it was pancakes, sometimes soup, sometimes just toast and jam. He never asked for more, and he always said thank you with a quiet sincerity that touched something deep inside her. In a town where everyone was fighting to get by, Harold was invisible to most. But not to Nora. She noticed the way his hands trembled, the way he sometimes rubbed his chest as though in pain. And she noticed something else too, the way he always left a small folded note beside his empty cup. Tiny, handwritten words of gratitude. "You're a light in a dark place. May kindness return to you when you least expect it. God bless your giving heart." Those notes became the only thing that made Nora smile some mornings. Her life wasn't easy. She was 27, a single mother to a 7-year-old boy named Caleb, juggling double shifts to keep their small apartment warm and the rent paid. Her ex had left years ago, chasing dreams and leaving her to face reality. Most days she came home so tired she barely had strength to cook. But when she told Caleb bedtime stories, she always included a piece of hope. Good things come back around, baby, even when it doesn't seem like it. Feeding Harold didn't seem like much, but it made her feel human again. One morning, after nearly 2 months of this quiet kindness, Harold didn't come. Nora kept glancing at the door between customers, her chest tight with worry. By noon her eyes stung. Days passed, 3, then 5, and still no sign of him. She told herself he'd found shelter, maybe gotten help, but a part of her feared something worse. Then, a week later, the diner door opened, and for the first time Harold wasn't alone. 2 black SUVs rolled up outside, their windows tinted, the kind that made heads turn in a small town like Maplewood. A man in a navy suit stepped out first, then another, both polished, serious, clearly out of place in a roadside diner. The bell above the door jingled softly as they entered. Every customer fell silent. Nora froze, holding a tray of coffee mugs. The suited men scanned the room before one of them spotted her and walked over. "Are you Nora Carter?" he asked, his tone polite but firm. She nodded, confused, her heart pounding. "Yes, is something wrong?" The man exchanged a glance with his companion before reaching into his coat and handing her an envelope. "Mr. Harold Quinn asked us to deliver this to you personally." Her breath caught. You know Harold?" "Les," the man said quietly. "He was our employer." The room seemed to tilt for a second. "Your employer?" The man nodded. "Mr. Quinn passed away peacefully 3 days ago. Before he did, he left very specific instructions for us to find you." Nora's tray nearly slipped from her hands. She stepped back, clutching the envelope, her mind spinning. She excused herself and went behind the counter, trembling as she tore it open. Inside was a letter, written in Harold's familiar shaky handwriting, and a check. A check so large that her eyes blurred trying to count the zeros. The letter read, Dear Nora, when you first brought me that cup of coffee, I hadn't spoken to anyone kindly in months. My heart was heavy with loneliness after my wife passed, and though I had money, I had lost the will to live. I disguised myself as a poor man to see if kindness still existed in this world. You showed me that it does. I was Harold Quinn, founder of Quintech Industries, but to you, I was just a hungry old man, and that's what saved me. Your quiet compassion reminded me of the woman I loved and the person I used to be. I spent my final weeks in peace because of you, enclosed as a small token, not charity but gratitude. Use it for your son, your dreams, and your future. You gave me warmth when I felt forgotten. I hope this brings light to your life the way you brought it to mine. With eternal thanks, Harold. Nora sank into the nearest booth, her hands shaking. Tears streamed down her face before she could stop them. The manager hurried over, and soon the whole diner was whispering, eyes wide, as she sat there staring at the check. $50,000. She couldn't breathe. It didn't feel real. The suited men introduced themselves as Harold's attorneys. One of them said softly, Mr. Quinn often spoke of you. He wanted you to know you made his final days joyful. For a long time, Nora couldn't find words. When she finally did, all she could whisper was, I didn't do anything special. I just fed him. The attorney smiled gently. Sometimes, Miss Carter, that's the most special thing a person can do. A news spread quickly through Maplewood. People who had ignored Harold began talking about the old man with the kind waitress. Some came to the diner just to meet Nora. But she stayed humble, still pouring coffee, still smiling through the exhaustion. The only difference was now she had hope, a future. She paid off her debts, bought Caleb new shoes, and started saving to reopen an old bakery downtown, something she'd always dreamed of doing. A month later, on a bright Saturday morning, Nora stood outside a newly painted storefront with a small sign that read Harold's Table, a place for everyone. The first thing she hung inside was a framed copy of Harold's note. Beneath it, she placed a simple jar labeled Pay It Forward Fund. Customers began leaving dollars, then tens, then 20s. Every time someone short on cash walked in, Nora made sure they left with a full belly and a bit of warmth in their heart. Sometimes, when the morning light hit the counter just right, she could almost see Harold sitting in his favorite booth, hat in hand, smiling quietly as if to say, You did good, kid. She often told Caleb the story when he asked why the diner was named after an old man. Because kindness never really dies. She'd tell him, it just finds another place to live. One afternoon months later, a woman in her 50s walked in, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. She introduced herself as Harold's daughter, Emily. Her eyes were bright with tears as she looked around the diner, seeing the plaque with her father's name. He was lonely for so long after my mom passed, she said softly. But you gave him peace. He wrote about you in his last journal. Said you were his angel in an apron. Nora smiled, tears glistening again. He was my reminder that even when life's hard, kindness still matters. They hugged in the middle of the diner, the smell of coffee and pancakes filling the air, sunlight spilling across the floor like a blessing. Life didn't suddenly become perfect for Nora. There were still tough days, long nights, and struggles. But she faced them with a heart that believed in miracles, because she had lived one. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to Kindness Journal for more true to life stories that prove compassion can change everything. And before you go, here's a special request. Comment below. I believe in kindness. If you think the world still needs people like Nora, because sometimes one cup of coffee can change a life forever.